Are you having fun? I'm having so much fun.
Oh, it's
I don't
unbelievable.
know. I think it's the weather. I think it's this energy. I don't question it, but it's really good. It feels good. It feels really good. So the temperature has been quite hot recently. We know this. So the whole month has been about, temperature, kind of. How are we dealing when the temperatures rise in life? So as the temperatures heat up outside, we find ourselves scrambling to keep cool. So we have various methods of keeping cool. And you might go to a movie theater or a restaurant. I spoke of this last week, and when it was really 100 degrees out, it sounded good. Today it doesn't. But escape to a cooler climate. Maybe you stay in a swimming pool or refuse to get in the car while the sun is beating down upon it, or you just stay in your air-conditioned home. Whatever your response to the physical heat is this month, we are looking at the idea of staying cool in the middle of heat, metaphorically. So we're looking at this metaphorically, spiritually. In other words, how do we keep our cool? Our spiritual cool, right? When our lives heat up. When the sun is high in the sky and the thermostat is rising, another way to keep cool sometimes is to stay in the shade. The term, or otherwise known as our shadow side, this shadow, the darkness. So the song that was just sung was pretty ironic because I didn't realize the song was going, I forgot. And the song is, accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. Well, I'm proposing we do the opposite. I'm proposing that we, yes, accent the positive, but embrace the negative. Because guess what? You can't escape it. It's part of our lives. So we're going to discuss that staying cool while in the middle of these heated times of our lives, So that term, shadow, was first introduced by Carl Jung to describe the repressed or denied part of self. And Robert Bly, an author, popularized this idea in his work called A Little Book of the Human Shadow. So in it, Bly said that we are each born, I like this, with a 360-degree personality. Like that? This is going into the workshop too next week. I was thinking of that. Good to see you here. So as infants, we express the full breadth of our human nature. Infants don't hold back. All 360 degrees without editing, without censoring. They haven't learned how to do that yet. But as we grow up, however, we learn that certain slices of that 360-degree pie were unacceptable to the people around us. So we started learning that. And maybe we were shamed for crying or punished for being angry. Maybe we were ridiculed for wanting attention, for acting proud of ourselves. We didn't all have such progressive parents as I see around today. It's very interesting. So, a lot of us maybe went through some of those kinds of experiences. So we learn to repress. We learn to repress those slices of our pie, that part of us, the one, and we learn to cover up and protect ourselves from being hurt. So according to Bly, it was as if we threw these unacceptable qualities over our shoulder into this bag that we now drag around for the rest of our lives, right? And I know in New Thought circles and spirituality, this is New Thought, religious science, in these circles, it's all light, it's all love, it's all God. And don't say anything that even appears negative. But meanwhile, we're having a human experience. So, the stuff is going on. And then we start to judge ourselves even more. Oh, I'm not a good spiritual person because look at this, I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling fear. I'm doing this spirituality wrong. So it's about integrating all of it, which we're going to talk about today. We might not talk about that aspect of ourselves, about what's in the bag, but we're dragging it around anyway, right? Maybe not. Maybe you unpacked your bag and you're like enlightened. I'm not. I know because I had family visiting from out of town all week. Everything that I thought was healed just popped right back up. And I'm like, okay, I'm peace here. I'm holding the peace. Anyway, there were last week we talked about the heat in the firecracker, you know? Well, the fireworks were going this week. Right now. So, but to do this, to work on ourselves, to integrate all part of ourselves affects the collective, the whole human race. And we can do that, and we can do it today. And I realize that this topic might sound a little heavy. And a lot of you might not know what I was going to talk about, and it's all good. That's all I'm going to say. It's all good, and it flows with ease and with grace. And we're all human beings. We're spiritual beings, and we are having a human experience. I honor our human side. I honor our humanity. I embrace it all. So let's begin the exploration with a short passage from Dark Matters, Discovering Wholeness in the Shadows. This is written by a Unity minister, Lori Boyd. She writes this: our culture teaches us to fear the experience of dark, especially the inner darkness that is our shadow self. In fact, we have grown so afraid over the years that we have built an imaginary wall between us and the darkness. We have developed rituals and psychologies and religions and pills to distract us from the darkness. We have focused on the light, seeking to eliminate the darkness, and yet in the end, the darkness is always there with us, waiting. And that darkness is what we're describing, kind of like the old beliefs that bring up fear or anger or any of those emotions. That's the darker part of us, and there's different variations on that, but that's where I'm heading with this today. And you may be mentally stepping back in protest right now, saying, no, I'm a child of the light. I'm the Christ light, which is true. No one is denying that whatsoever. And we don't learn at Joyful Gathering Spiritual Center that we do learn that we are beings of the light. That's what I say all the time, that we are expressions of the divine, whole, complete, and perfect in every way. And there really is no darkness, only light. I talk about that all the time. I've said those words very, very often. And they're all totally and completely true. We are all expressions of the divine, whole, complete, and perfect, just as we are. There is no darkness, only light. In absolute reality, I'm going to describe these aspects. These words are completely true. In absolute, with capital, reality. Because that is, absolute reality is a reality that is experienced from the perspective of the infinite oneness. When we're in our divine flow, when we're in alignment with the creative energy that has created all that is. And it always has a capital R to let us know we're talking about our divine selves. There is only oneness, and we are one with that oneness in the absolute. We are indeed pure expressions of God, radiant, whole, and complete all of the time. And so the first two statements in our Declaration of Principles by Ernest Holmes are: we believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. And we believe in the incarnation of the Spirit in everyone, and that all people are incarnations of the Spirit. So it is absolutely true that in the absolute, and that's when we're talking about divinity, the true self, there are no shadows. There's no darkness. There's only light. And then there's the relative. relative reality, small r's, lowercase. The reality experienced from the perspective of human experience, living a human life. This is reality as experienced through our five senses, okay? We're using our five senses through our conditioned responses. It is processed through our human reasoning and governed by limited human consciousness. So there's a two-ness, not a oneness. There's a duality in our lives because we are these beautiful spiritual beings, but we're having this human experience which makes us feel that we're separate from what we really believe and feel when we're in those moments where the light is just so filled. You know you're in the light when you're in a place of peace, of joy, of complete contentment, of harmony with self. But then life happens. And so we bring, the beauty is we can bring, I'm going off, we can bring that peace and that harmony, that knowing into our lives. And what that does is it completely affects the outcome. It completely changes, it diffuses those fireworks of human emotions that could be taking place all around you. Having just come from the 4th of July, you know, I can really grasp that whole concept that I spoke of last week with the fireworks. Okay, so we are spiritual beings, as I said, having this human experience, and we get to live in both of these realities. We're not either or right now. We are living in both realities, the absolute and the relative. So let's be clear. Let's be clear, very, very clear. The absolute truth of our being is that we are expressions of the infinite oneness made manifest. Do we all understand that?
Yes.
If not, Foundations class will begin in the spring, and it will be explained in great detail. It's the basis for this whole spiritual teaching, is that we are truly in the great reality all one. There is no separation, only separation through our five senses. And so on this human journey, we experience the false illusion of separation. We do. We experience the down, the fear, the sorrow, the sadness, the bad, the anger, the dark. We experience all of those things. And those are the things we've thrown over our shoulder and carry around in a bag because we don't want to look at them. We don't want to feel them. I don't want to feel them. I don't want to feel them at all. But they're there, and they can get triggered, so I'm not going to ignore it either. That bag has created what we call a shadow. The challenge is it doesn't stay just behind us. It can seep out and overshadow us at times, all kinds of ways. Little ways, like having a little fight with someone, or in huge ways. Huge ways is like what is going on this planet, what is going on in this country right here and right now, because it sure feels like a big separation. And this isn't separation from the divine and the human. This is separation in the experiences of humans. Like that feels to me, I don't know if it feels like that to you, but it's the dark side of humanity that is rising up for healing. We are the ones, when we are clear in our consciousness, to hold that light, to know that there are so many absolute, remember the capital A absolute realities taking place, that all of this is temporary. None of this is permanent. You know, we're all going to shed these bodies. We're all going to leave these bodies. But what's leaving the body? That's what we're talking about. That's the divine self. That's what's leaving the body, because it can't die. And it's part of the oneness. The challenge is it doesn't just stay behind us. Sometimes it can feel like chaos. And it can feel all kinds of emotions. And it is, I believe, at this forefront of humanity right now in a big way to heal. And it can only be healed individually. We can't heal groups of people. We can pray for them, hold the light for them, but we can only work on ourselves, our own consciousness, our own way of viewing and living life. And now that we've established, I hope, we've established the difference between the absolute and the relative, I want to read the same passage that I read before from Dark Matters, Discovering Wholeness. Wholeness, remember that word, in the shadows. Again, but continue beyond there, but I'm gonna continue it a little bit more. So, hear these words. Our culture teaches us to fear the experience of the dark, especially that inner darkness that is our shadow self. In fact, we have grown so afraid over the years that we have built an imaginary wall between us and the darkness. We have developed rituals and psychologies and religions and pills to distract us from the darkness. We have focused on the light, seeking to eliminate the darkness, and yet in the end, the darkness is always there with us, waiting. However, if we learn to step through that fear, there is another possibility, another road less traveled. On this road, we learn to accept the darkness. We learn to engage it in dialogue and to use it as a tool for our spiritual growth. That's important. And continuing. On this road, we learn that darkness is not the enemy of light, but simply the other half of light. We learn that our goal is not light, it's wholeness. We learn that true spiritual wholeness is not a denial of the dark side of ourselves, but rather an embracing of both our inner light and our inner darkness into an integrated, healthy, transcendent whole. So it really is all about wholeness, which is a big word in our teachings. Wholeness means nothing is missing. So when we do a lot of our affirmative prayer, we always usually have in there whole, complete, and perfect, which means in the divine sense of who we are, that's truth. That is our true self. We're going through the human life. That's what we're doing. And there is a parable that the Master Teacher Jesus shared that is relevant to us this morning. It's called the Parable of the Leaven, L-E-A-V-E-N, from Matthew chapter 13, verse 33. And in it, Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like heaven that a woman took and hid in 3 measures." No, let me do this again. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. So if we put that parable, which I'm going to attempt to do right now, if I can even speak it, I'm going to attempt to explain it, into the concept of our spiritual journey as being a journey to focus only on the light and to suppress the dark. Okay, because that's what we have been kind of, anyone else feeling that? Trained to do in a way. Do not look at that. Do not look at that. And the more you don't look at that, the more that is part of your life. So I'm saying, let's integrate it a little bit. Let's integrate it completely. So back to the explanation of the parable. So we might think that Jesus meant that the leaven is the light of God. The kingdom of heaven is like heaven, he said. And the flour is our darkness. When we bring the light of God to the darkness, we experience heaven. All right, that sounds good. I like it, but there is so much more. Let's remember something within the context of the time. Jesus was Jewish, and he practiced the Jewish culture. And leaven wasn't viewed as necessarily a good thing. In fact, during the Passover season, for several days before the Passover festival, people were required to remove all leaven, which, in case you don't know, is yeast or dough. You know, I even looked it up. I think, all right, this leaven thing. I better explain it for those who aren't clear what it is. And they did this. You have matzah. Love matzah. So they did this in remembrance of their escape from Egypt when they fled in such a hurry and they only had enough time to make unleavened bread for their journey. So leaven might not actually represent the light of God. In fact, it might represent just the opposite. What then? If we view it in the context of spirituality as a quest for wholeness, perhaps the parable is guiding us, encouraging us to accept, reclaim, and even integrate those parts of ourselves that we have labeled impure or unacceptable, the leaven. It suggests that those parts of ourselves can even be the catalyst that enables us to experience heaven when we integrate it into our daily lives, which is the flower. How do we do that? Ernest Holmes tells us this. So we got do we all are you on the page, same page as I'm on? Mm-hmm. Some of you? Yes. Okay, good. As long as I have a couple. So how do we do that? Ernest Holmes Ernest Holmes is a little clearer on this. Since we cannot this is good. Since we cannot contract the absolute, we shall have to expand the relative. So we cannot change the divine. We cannot limit the scope of this infinite creative genius that has created all that is, was, and ever shall be. We can't limit it, but we can always expand our consciousness of it. That's the whole point there. We expand our consciousness, and the more we expand our consciousness of this divine good, the more like heaven within us. Because we know heaven or hell are within us, not somewhere else, in here. In our experiences is what we create. And how we not just create, because sometimes it sure feels like hell in our experiences, and we didn't really create it, but we get to respond to it. So how are we responding to what is going on in our lives? That's the key question we ask ourselves. And we expand the relative by accepting that we are some part of the divine. We are Christ-lights. We are divine beings. We really are. And we allow the love that is within us, because that divinity is pure love. We let that love overcome any fear, overcome all the thoughts that want to come up. The ego has plenty of mind thoughts for us to latch onto, and if we don't watch our mind, we know how it takes off. It's very creative also. So we watch our mind and we take a breath and bring it back to, is this what love would do here? And I went through that a week or two ago. And that's where I bring myself, especially last week as I went through it. It's wonderful when I give these talks. And then, like, life happens. I get to use them. I said to myself a few times, is this what love would do here? Or what would love do here? What would love do here? So that kept my ego in check and allowed peace to actually unfold. So it's wonderful teachings to really use it. Holmes says, love alone can overcome fear. The soul must make a complete surrender of itself to the Spirit. If we surrender to the light of love and bring it to the places that we think in us are the shadows, we return to wholeness. The more we concentrate on bringing that light, that love, into our everyday experience, the more we become whole. Because the separation is just what we believe having these human experiences. So the wholeness is our love self, right? Okay. Brene Brown, before I finish, in her book, Daring Greatly, wrote this: "Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light." So, I think this morning I have two options. I can either do an affirmative prayer or a meditation. And it's a good thing I'm teaching this class. Yeah? Okay. It's a good thing I'm teaching the class the power of decision, right? We teach what we need to know. Let's do a prayer then. All right, so we'll do a prayer on peace and on really integrating divine light and love into our experiences. So take a deep breath with me. As we honor who we are, what we are, and anything we've thought about ourselves, our physical body, our emotional body, our spiritual self, anything, and we allow it to just relax a bit. Just relax, as the light of God is the only true reality that is. For this infinite light, this infinite nature of the divine is forever creating out of its own nature. And the nature of the divine is good only. It is in perfect order. The first law of the universe is order. Divine right order. We just look around and we can't even see the different planets and galaxies that are all harmonized with each other. Even when one moves and it looks like it's chaos, another moves 100 million billion light years away. It's all part of that expansive nature of the light and love of this creative energy that we call God. And so knowing that it is in harmony with itself, it is pure love beyond any comprehension that we could possibly hold. I know that myself and each one here is filled with this divine essence, is filled with this loving energy. It is the truth of our being. We are limitless in all that we choose to accomplish, to do, to be on this planet. Limitless. There's no limitation in the mind of the divine. Therefore, there is no limitation in our minds except for the one we put there. And so we embrace that and know that it's not the truth. We are capable of all things. And so therefore I declare that each one is moving forward in their lives, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, embracing life, all of its human flaws, all of its experiences, and knowing that our soul is expanding every time we bring truth or the light to any situation. We are expanding and we never contract after that. We just keep expanding and it's limitless. It does not end. There is no place to arrive. There's only this space to be. And so we be in the peace. We be in the love. We be in the harmony, and we embrace every aspect of who we are and what we are. Because we are individualized beings of the great I am. And I give thanks for this knowing. I give thanks, deep gratitude, for being in the spiritual community, for these glorious teachings that ring so true to my soul. I give thanks for all that is, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. I give thanks for it all because I know it is all part of the wholeness. It is all part of the spiritual human journey that we are on right now. And I give thanks for the love that I know is healing. I give thanks for that love. I give thanks for that light. And I release this word into the power, into the intelligence of divine law. The law of universal mind that brings forth the most beautiful manifestations and experiences in our lives, in our every day, in our every moment. And knowing that this is truth that I speak, I release it, and I let it be. And so it is.
So it is.